Notes from the Quiet Corner.
Chapter 4: The Silent Echo. The transition to junior high school was a shift in scenery, but the rules of engagement remained largely the same. I moved to a different building and encountered a new mix of children alongside some of the familiar faces from the Hill. In terms of the outside world, my trajectory didn't change. I was still a force to be reckoned with, and I dominated athletics, kept acing my classes, and won awards for my writing. I also joined the band, taking up the clarinet. I practiced constantly, eventually earning first chair. Because I lived in a house overflowing with 9, 10, sometimes 11 or 12 other children, privacy was a myth. There was no quiet corner to be found. When we had to record our practice sessions on cassette tapes to turn in for homework, my band leader would hear the chaotic symphony of a massive family roaring in the background, and instead of scolding me, she complimented me. She told me I had to possess an incredible amount of focus to play through that kind of noise. And she always rewarded my work, my hard work, with good grades. I worked hard because I had to. It was the unshakable mantra of our household. Work 10 times harder than the rest, because we were the first family of color in Newburgh. The town already looked down on us. We had to be extra good just to survive. But my efforts paid off academically. I got mostly A's and excelled in music, so much so that my band teacher personally sponsored me to go to summer band camp. That camp was one of the first times I felt a sense of pure liberation. The kids came from all over, not just the insular bubble of Oregon. And for a few weeks, I was surrounded by people who did not see me as lesser than. They just appreciated my music. It was a beautiful, fleeting oasis. The Invisible Wall. Outside of band camp, the reality of being a young black girl in Newburgh was incredibly isolating. I hit the age where crushes start to form, and I deeply liked a boy in the band, but in that era, interracial relationships were strictly taboo. The rules of race and gender cut differently for my brothers. In the white community's eyes, black men were often viewed with a strange, fetishized curiosity. They're seen almost like an exotic treat. My brothers never struggled to get a date or find girlfriends. Them young white women fancied them, chased after them, bought them things. They would even have girls waiting for them right at our house while they went on a date with another girl. But that was never my reality. For a black girl, the boundary lines were thick and impenetrable. My crushes could never blossom into anything more than a distant, safe friendship. I was profoundly alone. It was during these junior high years, trapped between an unwelcoming town and a crowded house, that I began to retreat inward. I started to become a true introvert. Still, I kept trying. I made what I thought were friends at school, and we would laugh and be silly in the hallways and talk about things during the day. I figured that meant that we were part of each other's world. That illusion shattered on my birthday. I had never been allowed to have a real birthday party because the neighborhood parents wouldn't let their kids come to our house, and I wasn't allowed at theirs. But this year, I was so excited. I invited all the girls I laughed with at school, and my mother invested heavily in the moment, buying decorations and baking cupcakes and making sure everything was perfect. I took a long, quiet bath and I got my hair neatly done. I put on my best clothes. Then I sat down and I waited. I waited for the door to open. I waited for headlights in the driveway. But no one showed up. Not one single person. And the next day, the girls at school simply ignored it. They acted as if the invitation had never existed, and I was too proud to bring it up. It became a defining theme of my youth. I would not experience a real birthday party until I became an adult. The town simply wasn't prepared to allow a bridge to cross into our home. The back of the line. Maybe one of my so-called friends felt a twinge of guilt for leaving me stranded with a room full of cupcakes. She invited me to a Christmas party, and I eagerly said yes. The truth was, beneath the armor of my good grades and my sharp tongue, I just wanted to fit in. Most of us at the party were in the school choir, and after the gathering, we went to sing carols at the local senior citizens' home. We stood there, together, harmonizing beautifully, our voices blending in the warm room, and when we finished, one of the ladies who lived there smiled and said, "Oh, we have some snacks for you guys. Thank you for singing for us." So we all happily formed a line to get hot chocolate and some cookies. I was right in the middle of the group. When I reached the front of the line, the elderly lady handing out the food stopped. She looked directly at me and said, cold as ice, "Get to the back of the line." The words hung in the air, and I immediately looked over at my friend's mother and the other parent chaperones standing nearby. They didn't step forward. They didn't reprimand this woman. Instead, they carefully looked away, pretending the floor or the walls had suddenly become fascinating. I looked at my friends. They all stayed silent. In that moment, the cold truth washed over me. There was no one there to protect me. My mother wasn't there, my father was gone, my siblings were absent, and I was entirely exposed in a world that hated my skin, surrounded by so-called friends who would watch me be humiliated without uttering a word. I didn't get any snacks. I walked over to a dark corner of the room, squeezed my eyes shut, and whispered to myself the slogan that would govern the rest of my childhood. Don't cry. Be strong. A fractured sanctuary. While I was fighting these battles at school, the dynamics inside our house were fracturing. My older sisters had finally had enough of the stifling racism and pressure of Newburgh, and they packed up and moved to Portland, getting their own apartment, finding jobs, and finishing high school in the city. My mother allowed it, leaving me behind in the middle school years with my younger brother, the brother just above me, and an older sister who wasn't quite old enough to leave yet. With the older girls gone, the buffer in the house changed. My eldest brother brought a friend to come live with us, a boy who had been kicked out of his own home and had nowhere else to go. And one night, the ultimate betrayal occurred. He walked into my bedroom and molested me. I was just a child, but the fighter in me woke up. I tried to claw and fight him off, but he was older and he was terrifyingly strong. Afterward, shaking and violated, I confided in my sister. She didn't keep it a secret. She boldly confronted him in front of the entire family. It was a dangerous moment for him. My older brothers were standing right there, and if he had confessed, they likely would have beaten him within an inch of his life. So he did what all cowards do. He lied. He denied it completely, and the family chose the easier path. They didn't believe me. The loneliness that settled into my bones that night was absolute. Up until that moment, the world outside our door was a war zone, but the inside of our house had been my oasis. Now the walls had failed. I was no longer safe in my own bed, and the people who were supposed to be my fortress had looked at my pain and called it a lie. Running toward the horizon. To survive, I had to find back doors to safety. Sometimes my band teacher's sponsorship rescued me, sending me away to music camps where I could breathe. Other times, my mother would pack me onto a Greyhound bus for the summer, sending me to live with my oldest sister and her husband, or with acquaintances I barely knew. Even those escapes were fraught. My new brother-in-law amused himself with a cruel brand of bullying. He would drive me to the local roller skating rink, and I'd have a wonderful afternoon skating away from my troubles. But when he came to pick me up, I would walk up to the car, reach out my hand to open the door, and he would suddenly hit the gas and drive 20 yards. He would sit there laughing while the other kids outside watched me stumble after the car. He'd let me get close and do it again. It was a small, petty cruelty, but to a girl who was already drowning, it was unbearable. One afternoon in junior high, the pressure blew the lid off. I couldn't take the school, the home, or the loneliness for one more second, and I walked down to the bus station, bought a ticket, and ran away. I traveled far for a middle school student, making it all the way to Corvallis, Oregon. I ended up at a lonely bus terminal, a vulnerable child sitting on a bench with nowhere to go. Thank God a kind older man noticed me. He saw right through my defiance and recognized a runaway. He didn't hurt me, and he didn't exploit my vulnerability. He sat down and told me firmly, "You can't be walking around by yourself." He took me to his home, fed me, and immediately contacted the authorities, who took me and sent me back to my mother. When the police brought me back across the threshold of the Newberg house, my mother didn't scream or cry. In fact, she did something much stranger. She completely ignored it. She never asked me why I had fled. She never sat me down to ask what was burning inside of me that made me board a bus to a city hours away. The topic was buried, joining the long list of things we didn't talk about. Kevin on the party line.
Having been a school teacher for over 30 years, I know firsthand how cruel children can be. Kids can be absolute monsters. But looking back at the time through the eyes of a professional educator and a deeply sensitive empath, I still carry the ache of those friendships. I know how I am wired, and I feel what others feel. If my own brother had tried to play a cruel trick on a naive friend, I would have stopped him. I would have protected my friend. But I had to learn that the rest of the world wasn't wired like me. I was completely, entirely on my own. It's a miracle of psychology that I didn't experience a total fragmentation of my mind. Surviving severe childhood trauma, public racism, and sexual abuse inside your own home is exactly how dissociative identity disorder is born. The mind splits into multiple personalities just to wall off the pain. I didn't fragment, but my creative mind did find a brilliant, safe backdoor to human connection. At that time, we lived in an era of telephone party lines, shared phone lines where you could occasionally pick up a receiver and find someone else trying to make a call. So one afternoon, the phone rang and I answered it. The person on the other end was looking for someone else. Instead of hanging up, I changed my voice. I dropped down a pitch and altered my cadence and pretended to be a junior high school boy named Kevin. The kids on the other line loved Kevin, and we started talking regularly. They would call the house asking for him, and I would call them back. And for weeks, I had a group of genuine friends who laughed with me, shared secrets with me, and valued my company. They liked Kevin because Kevin didn't have to carry the weight of being the only black girl in a racist town or the stigma of an abusive home. He was just a boy on the phone. The charade came to an abrupt halt when my mother answered the phone one afternoon. A voice on the other end asked to speak to Kevin, and my mother's brow furrowed. "There is no Kevin here," she said sharply. "Do you mean Kenneth? He's still in elementary school, so why on earth are you calling my son?" That was the sudden death of Kevin, but the memory stayed with me. It was the first time I realized that my voice, my ability to create a character and project a story through a wire, could create a sanctuary where the real world couldn't touch me. So by the end of junior high, my mother realized that the local school system had run its course for me. I was acing every advanced curriculum they threw at me, out studying the hostility around me through the sheer force of will. She knew she had to find a place where my academic gifts could actually grow. So she began looking into private education. And for a terrifying brief moment, she almost accidentally enrolled me into a cult. She pivoted at the last second, pointing our lives in a different spiritual direction. She enrolled me into a strict Mennonite academy, Western Mennonite High School. But that's a story for another time. That's chapter 5.